Hey everyone, welcome to week 65. Today is day 5. This is Friday. This is our last day on our compressed week. So we'll see how we're going to do. Remember, next week, new theme. We're going to be here. Bye.
Okay, let's get started. This is going to be day 5. This is our last day of our compressed week. And throughout the week, we've explored the expressive ways in which we can accommodate our painting into a very narrow value range. And I've been very honest about saying that, this is a very simple exercise. Like fundamentally, this could be considered an exercise that, if examined on the surface, it's just almost like exceedingly simple. There's not much to it. And it's actually kind of forgiving. Because if you think about it, if you shorten your value range, if you minimize your options when you're trying to translate planar shifts or relationships that you see in nature into value relationships, if your options are fewer than the ones that you would get if you were using a full value scale, then even though it may seem a little bit strange, it is an easy exercise. You just have to fit in the relationships that seem to be closer to the options that you have. Now, the tough part is that you are going to take like a leap of faith. If your instinct is always trying to translate one-to-one those planar shifts that you see in nature with the corresponding value in your value scale, it's going to feel weird. And you are going to have to trust that what you're doing at the end is going to make sense. You are going to be able to configure an image that may not quite be what you're expecting if you're expecting something that will echo the relationships that you're going to find in nature. But in the end, you see that it makes sense. And I say that potentially it's a very simple exercise because it simplifies painting. If you take options away from you, and I think that that's something that people sometimes fight against. What you eventually recognize is that painting is actually far more manageable, far more digestible if there are fewer variables to it. Fewer variables obviously means that there are going to be also fewer expressive possibilities in terms of value, in terms of hues, in terms of saturation. That is simply the truth. And a lot of people, when they're painting, they want their paintings to feel boundless. They want their paintings to feel like they can access every single hue that's available in nature. Dozens of greens and dozens of blues and dozens of violets, and you can make all of these colors work. And for a lot of people, that sounds incredibly attractive and rich. For me, that sounds like death. I mean, if you give me so many options to paint, I am going to be so overwhelmed that I'm going to have a panic attack and I'm probably never going to paint again in my life because I'm going to see so many possibilities right in front of me that I just don't know what to do. So for my personality and for the path that I've chosen, and these are the things that have worked for me, they don't have to work for you, but these are the things that have worked for me. And hopefully, if you're lost, and if you do feel overwhelmed, maybe these exercises can help you too. I feel a lot better, a whole lot better, when I have very few variables. When painting is asking of me to do a lot with very little, I can deal with that challenge. When I think about it, to me, that's a gorgeous challenge. That's a challenge that's worth undertaking because I can see where my inventiveness can come to my aid and help me solve things. I can feel like I'm actively trying to resolve all these problems. And that's awesome to me. But when I have a ton of hues available, sometimes I think that my job is not going to be as important as feeling this weight, this obligation to just use all these incredible colors. And something that worked for me, we've talked about this before, but I was educated by two of the most amazing painters I've ever met in my life, Steven Essel and Max Ginsberg, and they both had very rich, very extensive palettes. Steve being the one that had the largest palette of the two. But something that worked for me, when I went back home and I told myself I have to figure out how I paint. I don't want to build my own painting practice. I don't want to build my understanding of painting based upon somebody else's understanding, based upon how somebody else sees painting. And the way Steve and Max see painting is beautiful, is absolutely beautiful. And they both have very idiosyncratic ways of understanding paint. I think the coolest thing in the world is when you realize that Steve was actually Max's student. Max taught Steve how to paint. And Max and Steve are very, very different painters. There is a chasm between the philosophy of painting that they both exalt. To me, I find that fascinating that you could honor your teacher and still paint very, very differently. Very differently. So I think that my path has been precisely that. I love my teachers. I adore Steve and Max. I can be critical, but I still very much so think that they are two of the most talented people I've ever seen paint. I don't think that's ever going to change in my life. And now that I'm older, it's not that I question the decisions they've taken in their path, in their pursuit for the understanding of their own painting. It's not really my place to question what they have done throughout their careers. What I can do is understand how I would have made different decisions based upon my own sensibility. What I can do is recognize who I am as a painter and see how I would adapt everything that they taught me that I cherish so much, that feels like it truly belongs to me. And one of the things that I realized very, very early was that my path didn't need a bunch of colors. My path didn't need a ton of variables. That was my truth. When I started to gather the information I needed to try and construct what was going to be my painting practice, and when I started to question things that I thought I knew, I had to first ask myself, what are those things that have moved me in particular? And as we've spoken throughout this week, Twachtman was huge. Whistler was huge. I mean, Whistler was eventually huge. I can honestly say that when I started to paint, I just didn't understand Whistler. I really didn't. I thought some of his paintings were lazy. And I thank the universe that I just kept kind of poking at Whistler. And I told myself I have to try and understand these paintings better and better and better. And nowadays, and I think this is going to be something that I keep with me throughout the rest of my life, I think he was a genius. I think Whistler was an absolute genius of painting. I mean, his ego was equally as huge as his talent, but he was incredible. He was absolutely incredible. So it was really nice when I had to try and purge myself from all this information that I was carrying. And again, this is not like a purge as if it was a bad thing. It's not like I have parasites in my body and I have to purge. All the teachings that I've had throughout my life, they have brought me here. All these wonderful people, the effort that they've put into my education has brought me here. And now it's my responsibility to figure out who I am. This is not about betraying anyone's trust or betraying what they have taught you. I really believe that when you teach someone anything, I mean, in our particular case, we can just understand it as an education of painting. But when you teach somebody anything, you have to believe that it is not our job to try and perpetuate our beliefs. It is not. Nothing will be gained if you ask of people to just blindly follow what you tell them to follow, with the hopes of them eventually becoming teachers and teaching other people about those same beliefs, and hoping that those teachings can be passed on through future generations of painters, and that way that school of thought will stand the test of time. I don't believe in any of that. I really, really don't. The mark of some of the greatest teachers out there is the fact that they can have students that care about them, that are grateful to them because of all the efforts that they put into accompanying them to become these wonderful artists. And the teacher can believe one thing, and the student can believe something that's entirely different. I have really great friendships with students of mine that didn't care about painting. And I thought that was fantastic. I always asked of them, this may be something that you don't care about, but I hope, and this was my hope, that they would understand that painting was my life, that painting was something that was very, very important for me. So I was fine with them understanding that painting, wasn't part of their life. But what I hoped was that they understood that it's not that painting was worthless. It's just that painting was not something for them, but that there are people in this world that really truly feel that it is through painting that they can try and make sense of the world. When they understood that, I think that we don't have to agree upon anything, but there is this underlying respect where you know that you can believe different things and you can have an argument or a conversation and you're still going to be fine in the end. Because my goal was never to train people to become painters and to become painters that believed in these very specific dogmas of painting. No, that's terrible. That's absolutely terrible. When I do these exercises, when I go back and I refresh myself, when I realize, okay, I'm still this painter that loves an aspect of painting that I recognized so many years ago, so many years ago, it really does feel amazing. It feels empowering because, you guys have heard me say that we don't own anything in life. We really don't. We are going to leave this universe with nothing. We're supposed to leave with nothing. We're supposed to understand that we don't own anything. But I do feel that there are moments in our lives where we recognize, I think I've said that something belongs to us. But I've also tried to say that this is not about having a sense of ownership. This is not about feeling, okay, this is mine and mine alone, and I have to protect it and I can't share it and I'm going to treasure it. No, we should, I use this word a lot, but we should celebrate it. We should say, wow, I finally came upon something that feels part of me. Perhaps it's not about us saying, okay, this is a characteristic of my work. This is something that I can't share because this is something that my work is identified by. If other people try to paint using this quality that I've understood as my own, then they're losers because their work is just going to echo mine because this is what I do well. So they're always going to be referencing me. Needless to say, that's a very dark path. In painting, there's no subject matter or painting practice that belongs to anyone. This is not like Sargent has a patent on his know-how. If you can paint like Sargent, go ahead. Be my guest. Give that a shot. If you can paint like Fortuny, oh, please, paint. I would love to see that. If you think you can paint light like Sorolla, I'll pre-order 20 paintings. Thank you. No, it's not that easy. It's not about mimicking the way somebody paints. It's not about painting the same subject matter of somebody who's really successful at painting. No, I think that painting's not supposed to be any of those things. Any of those things. I mean, we are going to go through life and we are going to find so much pleasure when somebody expresses some of the things that we haven't been able to put into words, or when somebody executes a painting that we've wanted to execute, but they do it so much better. They were able to materialize that painting that you've been struggling with, and you finally see the potential of the image that you couldn't execute. I mean, both of those things sound very frustrating, but in the end, they're very beautiful because you realize, wow, this person shares a ton of the same values that I share. And that's awesome. I think that that's amazing. It can be disheartening when you feel that somebody else is living your life and is doing a much better job at it than you are. But this is a cool thing. This is actually a good thing because you realize that we are sensitive human beings, and throughout life, we're going to meet people that feel completely different about things that you would care about, and you're going to meet people that share your values, that immediately are along for the ride with you. But I don't think we should want to be surrounded by like-minded people. I think that that's becoming a problem for us. And I know this goes against the way the world wants to develop, because the world is kind of telling you, hey, these are the values that we are trying to push in order for this planet to just feel like a better home for all of us. That if you try to look into the future, you believe that, okay, that would be a far more balanced home, a far more balanced planet than the one that we're currently destroying. Look at every single country in this world right now. The world is on fire. So we have an idea, we have an outline on how to make things better. But I do think that that also polarizes us, because you're going to get half of the world that says we want to move forward, and you get half of the world saying, hey, the world hasn't been bad to me. Like, I like the world how it is. I'm not suffering. And they want to stick to traditions, to their values and the beliefs that they've upheld through generations. And the tough thing about this is that eventually there's going to be two hemispheres, like two teams in this planet. What do you do then? One side of the planet, whichever side you pick, is going to think that they're right and the other side is wrong. They are the ignorant ones. They are the stupid ones. They don't know what they're doing. That works for any side. So what do? I think it's quite simple. And I know it goes against what people are doing, but you have to stop surrounding yourself with people that are like-minded. What I'm talking about, and hopefully I'm making some sense because I know this is a very sensitive subject, we have to make ourselves a bit uncomfortable, I feel, because that's the only way we are going to bridge the gap between those two sides, those two teams. And there has to be a way to bridge the gap, because if not, then there's just going to be two hemispheres that hate each other, and we'll be completely fine if it comes down to destroying each other. And that's the end of us. In my darkest days, I sometimes say, well, that's probably fitting. That's our species. We are that stupid. We are that dumb that we know we're headed that way. We know we're headed towards our self-destruction, and we are totally fine with it. But in my better days, I'd like to believe that there is a way to say, you know what? This is going to be tough because it's never going to be easy. But there has to be a way in which we can have a conversation. We can start with the smaller conversations. Again, I'm not talking about putting your life in danger, like inserting yourself back in a place where you were displaced from. No, that's a little too much. But we can start with smaller stuff. We can start with smaller conversations. If we don't just surround ourselves with people that all we do is just agree upon everything every single time we have a conversation, well, that's not growth. That's not going to take us anywhere. That's just going to make us understand I'm safe here and I'm not going to make any effort to change or evaluate any single one of my beliefs. And I think we have to be willing to put our beliefs to test. And the best way to do it is just by surrounding yourself with people that are different. Surround yourself with people where you can have intelligent conversations about things that perhaps both of you are not quite certain about. And I know that this is weird, that this reflection comes from painting, but I think, painting can be a start. Painting can be like this little ecosystem that teaches us about, the larger universe. And as painters, and this happens quite often, we can choose to surround ourselves with people that want to paint, the exact same things and want to believe the exact same things that we believe in. We try to push the same values and we exalt the same qualities, in painting. And if people disagree with us, we just cancel them and block them. And that's it. That's a very efficient way to deal with somebody that you don't agree with. But I think it'd be cool if you're a painter and you're in contact with people that believe in completely different things than you, then that's a cool thing. That's going to scramble your brain. The next time you sit down and paint, you're going to be like, okay, I can try and do what I know how to do, that I know I do it well, and maybe I can sell it, and I need some money this month to pay rent. So I have this option to go for the safe thing. I mean, safe thing, right? There's no safe things in art, but I have the opportunity to go for this thing that I know that I can do well, or this thing that she said yesterday. It just burrowed into my brain, and maybe I can't sleep. Maybe I'm just thinking about that all the time. And maybe, just maybe, I'm going to try to see if I introduce this into my painting practice, if it challenges a bunch of things that I thought I knew were fundamental to my painting. And maybe your brain is just scrambled eggs for like 2 months. But maybe after those 2 months, you start doing stuff that you never thought you were capable of doing. And it's all because you just surrounded yourself, not with people that would just cheer you on and would call you a genius every time you do a painting, but with people that would question you and push you and made you believe that maybe your paintings are not that great. Maybe it's not that special. I think today is about recognizing that you have to fight to try and understand who you are. There is a sense of fight within us. We have to work really, really hard to try and understand who we are, to try and recognize the values that are going to make up the human beings that we are. That's our struggle and that's our path. And that's going to be the road that we're going to travel on. But maybe this triumphant feeling that we many times venerate about us finally feeling like we're on the right side, maybe that's not the end. Maybe it's not about us just feeling like I finally understood myself and this is where my story ends. Maybe after that, this new chapter opens where you say, now that I know who I am, let me again put my beliefs to test and let me share them with people that maybe don't think like me. That's not going to be easy. But let me see if I can grow as a human being if I decide to do that. In the end, that is a triumph worth celebrating. So that's going to be it for this week. As we say on Fridays, Danny, Samu, Fer, and myself, we thank you for the opportunity that you gave us to be your company, even if it's for 15 minutes a day. And what we ask of you is that you give us a chance to be your company next week. So we'll see you next week. Next week, new theme. We're going to be here. Love you guys. Bye.